dear viewer, to this channel, the Besqua Institute of Research and Development. I want to tackle the issue of research and I want to give it an approach of an academic research. Research is coined from two words. The first one is re and the other one is search. And this means that search again. It means do not accept things from the surface, but get deeper to the things that are below the surface. And this means there's something that's unknown, what we call the knowledge gap. And a researcher is a person who goes towards establishing what are the issues in the research gap. Research gap presents in what we call the problem of the study or the statement of the problem when you're developing the proposal. Research is very important in life and especially to academicians and business and managers, also administrators, and also government agencies. The importance of research is granting an edge to those people who are implementing any change in the administrative task or management role. A person who is a researcher is able to make decisions pegged on what we call data. And it is true, they always have a knowledge that will grant them an edge over their competitors. In an academic context, a research can be done from any level, right from the certificate, diploma, degree, that's at the graduate, postgraduate, including masters, and PhD level. Why do we do research? We do research to to expand the knowledge, to expand what we as humanity knows. Let me get back to how do you start off the research. You have what you call uh, conceptualization as an important part of doing research. When I talk about conceptualization, it is from the word concept, and concept comes from the word conceiving. You need to conceive it in your mind and you need to understand it, what you're going to do based on how you conceive it. And that means it is an important aspect that comes from the mind. Where, why do we start in conceiving? Because research is all about the mind. And in the research gap, there are some variables. Value is the root word of variables. And for us to understand any concept, we need to conceptualize the variables that are at play in a research context. What is a variable? Variables are very important and critical when it comes to researching because they are the ones that we base our comparison on. It is, it is accurate to state that when you talk about a research, we are attempting establishing the relationship between variables, and that's why you see there's no title that has that can be constructed without variables. So variables are in categories, and I will discuss about four today. The first one is what we call the independent variable. I'll talk about the dependent variable. I'll talk about the intervening variable, and I'll talk about what we call the moderating variable. An independent variable is what is changing, and as a result of change, it causes the independent variable to change. There's much cause and effect relationship between independent and dependent variable, and we investigate as researchers to establish how this relationship behaves. Does it increase? Does it reduce? Does it, as what do you call it, does the change of one result to the change of another? When we talk about independent, it is the source of the change, and the dependent is where the effect is seen. I want to use a daily example of a cup of tea and taste, and using sugar. If you got a cup of tea, which is about 300 ml, and you want to change the taste of that tea, you can change by adding the number of teaspoons or reducing the number of teaspoons. Understand in context that you cannot change taste, and but you can change the number of teaspoons that you put into this cup. And in that sense, uh, sugar, the number of teaspoons becomes your independent variable, and taste becomes your dependent variable. And if you are to plot that, you have the horizontal line in an XY axis. The horizontal is the X and the vertical one is a Y. And in this case, the taste will be on the Y and the X will be the sugar. Now, that relationship is giving us what we know as the basic relationships between variables. And it's a very common scenario. In enterprises, the amount of capital determines the profit. So capital is the um, X, or what we call the dependent variable. And then the profit Y is the dependent variable. I want to bring it also in other dimensions of life. They are more common than we think, because even in a life, it depends on the departure time. If you are left at certain point A at 1 o'clock and it takes 1 hour to travel to point B, that means the arrival time will be 2. But the arrival time will be dependent on the departure time. If you are sensitive, you can find that there's quite a lot in life that's about to cause and effect. So, in this context, as a researcher, one of the things that you need to do is to determine what is the independent and what is the dependent. And you get out to determine what is the relationship between the two. In this argument, therefore, when we talk about the research gap, you need to contextualize and be able to tell with clarity which one is the dependent and which one is the dependent. At that point, the researcher becomes more clear on what you're going to do ahead. Let me be frank and say, as far as research is concerned, its success is determined by the goodness of the research problem that you identify. So let me go on to the next one, which is called the intervening variable. Intervener is something that comes in between. And for instance, when you want to compare the relationship between education and wealth, you can never have the two relating with each other directly without us having what we call the income. In this context, income is an intervening variable. Not all educated people are wealthy, but those people who earn income have got a chance of becoming wealthy. So, in this context, income is an intervening variable. On the other hand, there's what we call the modulating variable. Modulating variable is that which does not is able to influence the relationship between the two. For instance, when you got education in an institution and the administration and discipline and performance, education institutional administrators are able to identify when the performance is becoming poorer and thus intervene to promote discipline. And in the process, that discipline can turn up performance. Therefore, in context, we can say that whenever a person or an issue is such that it can improve the relationship between the variables, then it is true to regard that as a modulating variable. Modulators are very powerful. They're able to control or determine the direction of two variables, and they are very powerful in context and in research. So, my student today, I want to remind you of where I've started. I started with telling about what is research. Research is combination of two words, re and search. It means research again. And I have talked about the issue of conceptualization. It comes from the mind. And I've also shared with you issues of variables. There's one more variable that you may research on called confounding variable. With that, I want to wish you well and join us as BESCOA Institute of Research and Development as we guide you in the research process. I'm your presenter, Robert K. Muraya, the founder of BESCOA Consultants Limited and BESCOA Institute of Research and Development. Thank you. Quality and service, the region trade.